It was late July when my friends and I decided to go camping deep in the Cascade Mountains. There were 4 of us: me, Jake, Eric, and Danny. We'd all grown up together, and summer camping trips were something we did every year. But this time we wanted to go somewhere more secluded, off the main trails, away from other campers, just us and the wilderness. Looking back, maybe that was our first mistake. We'd driven most of the afternoon to reach our spot, a small clearing by a river, about a mile from an old, unmarked trail. It was remote enough that we'd need GPS to find our way back out. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, and the sound of the river rushing nearby was peaceful. We spent most of the day setting up camp, fishing, and gathering firewood. The woods were so quiet you could almost hear your own heartbeat, like the trees were watching, waiting. By the time night fell, we'd started a fire and had dinner. The stars were bright in the clear night sky, and the fire crackled, casting shadows that danced on the trees around us. We started telling ghost stories, egging each other on with tales of cryptids and creatures that were supposedly spotted in the area. It was all in good fun, but I could tell that each of us was looking over our shoulder a little more than usual. Around midnight, the mood shifted. The first sign was subtle, a strange, muffled thud coming from somewhere in the darkness beyond our campsite. First, I thought it was just an animal, maybe a deer or something heavier moving through the brush. But then we heard it again, a little closer this time. Jake was the first to say something. "Did you guys hear that?" We all went quiet, listening. Another thud sounded, followed by the unmistakable sound of something heavy moving slowly through the underbrush, circling our camp. Each step was heavy, deliberate, with a faint crunch that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It was as if something was pacing around us, just outside the reach of our firelight. Danny joked nervously, "Maybe it's Bigfoot. Come to join the party." But none of us laughed. The footsteps stopped suddenly, and for a long, tense moment, everything was silent again. We relaxed slightly, convincing ourselves it was just a bear or an elk, maybe even a mountain lion. But then something large and solid landed just beyond the firelight. A rock, a good-sized one, about as big as my fist. It had been thrown with enough force that we heard it hit the ground. Eric stood up, shining his flashlight into the trees, calling out, "All right, if someone's out there messing with us, show yourself." The light cut through the darkness, illuminating only more trees, but no one answered. Then, as if to reply, another rock landed even closer. We were all on edge now, trying to catch sight of whatever or whoever was out there. That's when the smell hit us. It was overwhelming, like a mix of wet dog, rotting vegetation, and something even more foul that I couldn't place. I've been around wild animals all my life, but this stench was different, almost like decay. I covered my nose with my sleeve, and I could see the others doing the same. Then we heard it, a deep, guttural grunt, followed by a heavy exhale. The sound was low, resonant, and far too close. I tried to brush it off as a bear, but something about the way it sounded, it was almost human, yet not. My heart was pounding, every instinct telling me to run, but my legs felt rooted to the spot. And then I saw it, just at the edge of the firelight, a dark, hulking figure, maybe 7 or 8 feet tall, partially obscured by the trees. It swayed slightly, almost as if sizing us up. I couldn't make out any details, just a massive silhouette with impossibly broad shoulders and arms that seemed to hang lower than they should. The firelight reflected off something, its eyes, which were locked on us with an unsettling intensity. Jake whispered, That's not a bear." I could hear the tremor in his voice. None of us dared to move, barely even breathing, as we watched this thing swaying in the shadows. For what felt like an eternity, it stood there, watching us, unmoving. Then, without warning, It let out a deep, rumbling growl that vibrated through the ground beneath us. It sounded almost like a warning. I saw Eric's hand slowly reach for the knife on his belt. But before he could do anything, the creature took a step forward. The light caught more of it now, and I could make out thick, dark fur covering its massive frame. And its eyes, they were dark, reflective, intelligent. Panic surged through me. I wanted to run, but something in those eyes kept me rooted, like it was daring me to move. Just when I thought it would step into the light, turned and disappeared into the trees. But we could still hear it, its heavy footsteps moving away, breaking branches and crunching leaves as it went. We all let out the breath we'd been holding, our minds racing, barely believing what we'd seen. We stayed awake the entire night, huddled around the fire, jumping at every noise. By the time dawn broke, we packed up in silence, not bothering with breakfast. We'd barely started down the trail when we found something that stopped us cold. Right in the middle of the path were footprints, massive, human-like, but larger than anything I'd ever seen, with a depth that suggested a creature of incredible weight. We took a few pictures. Though none of us really wanted to linger, we could still feel it, the sensation of being watched, of something intelligent, powerful, lurking just beyond the edge of sight. When we finally reached the car, the relief was overwhelming. But even as we drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever we'd encountered was still out there, watching. I tried to brush it off as a trick of the light, an overactive imagination. But in my heart, I knew that wasn't just some ghost story or a tall tale. I had come face to face with something ancient, something that didn't belong in our world but had somehow survived, hidden in those dense woods. And I'll never forget those eyes, dark and knowing, like they held secrets far older than I could ever understand. Now, every time I go camping, I can't shake the feeling that I'm not alone, that somewhere out there, he is waiting, watching.